Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. I've got croaks today. It'll be typical if I come down with something with our Christmas lunch coming up on Saturday. No, I think it's just a bit gruff. Billy Goat's job. This is one of those videos about a particular genus or subgenus within an alliance. Been doing a few of these now and again. They are filling in gaps where there's not a huge amount going on, but that doesn't mean to say we can't talk about types of orchids, so that's where this sort of fits in. Today I'm going to have a talk about Miltonias. First of all, not to be confused with Miltoniopsis, despite the efforts of some nurseries who still get it wrong. The Miltoniopsis were once classed as Miltonias until it became blatantly obvious that they grow in a different part of the world for a start. They grow in completely different environments, and quite honestly they look completely different. So a separate genus. There's not that many, there's loads of hybrids, but I think there's only 5 or 6 actual species of Miltoniopsis. They were separated out. You'll often still see them referred to as Miltonias, so they're not. So Miltonias then, in the Oncidium alliance, and to all intents and purposes, for care, or certainly in the sort of environments that I've got, can be thought of as Oncidium mainstream. They grow in quite similar environments, they require similar light, similar care all round really, but there are some exceptions. Now I don't know how many Miltonia species there are. I think it's about 30. There may be more, maybe less, I don't know. But it's not a vast genus. There's not hundreds of them or anything, you know. So, and they vary quite a bit. Many of them are very deep colours, bronzy, reds, maroons, waxy type flowers. Some are quite flimsy, delicate, light colours, pastel shades. They vary quite a bit. They also vary where they're found. These are mainly South American jobbies, Brazil, Argentina, all that sort of stuff. And all the little ones that I can never remember. But that sort of arena, you know, after the thin bit gets fat again. And they tend to grow in damp forests as opposed to dry forests, light and airy forests. You probably wouldn't find any there. They tend to like the humidity. They can grow at quite varied elevations, but they seem to average about 800 metres. So they're classed as cool to hot growing, which means they have a variety of environments where they can be found. And the good thing about that is you can read into that statement, cool to hot growing, they are quite temperature tolerant. But within the species you will find 1 or 2 that have more precise environmental requirements, where they wouldn't be happy outside of their particular requirements. So you do still need to go down to that level. There are a lot of hybrids around, Miltonia hybrids, and compared with other types of orchids, there's quite a high percentage of natural hybrids. These are the ones that have the little X in front of the name, so they're given a species name, lowercase. They have an X in front to show that it is actually technically a hybrid, but it's found in the wild. That's the difference. So a naturally occurring hybrid. And there's quite a few Miltonias like that. They're readily included in intergeneric types as well. They readily hybridize with normal Oncidiums, Brassias, various others. They get given quite strange names, some of those intergenerics. Now, you'll have seen, as I've been chatting, a few pictures passing over. They're Miltonias that I've had and lost or given away to somebody else, or even sold possibly. I don't sell that many, but ones that have ceased to be. They're no longer in the collection for one reason or another. And what we'll do now is we'll have a think about the ones I've actually got, including the one that we had a look at yesterday, in fact, the one that's just come into bloom. Now I will admit to making not a mistake, yes, but it's more the fact that I forgot something. I was accusing this bloom of possibly being a Spectabilis or a Morelliana species or close hybrid containing that. And what I'd forgotten about is those species, they are classed as separate species, despite some places still saying one is a variation of the other. They are separate species as such, but they tend to only have one bloom per spike. That's quite an unusual trait, yeah? And they will often have 2 spikes from each bulb, but if you think about it, to get a decent amount of blooms on a plant, you're going to have a pretty big plant, aren't you? So that may not be the best choices if you're going for species. Others have your normal sort of arching spikes or upright spikes with multiple blooms on. But some of them don't have many. That is one of the traits of Miltonias. Some of them only have 2 or 3 blooms on a spike. Others 7, 8, 9, 10. They vary quite a bit. So again, if you're looking for something that has lots of blooms on a spike, check the individual species. Or if it's a primary cross found in the wild or anything like that, check the parents and see what's going on. Right, these readily grow mounted, and some would say from experience they're climbers in the main. They like their rhizomes to raise up out of your pot, and sometimes long enough to go straight over the edge when you thought you had plenty of room in the pot. They're already first growth over the side of the pot. So they don't tend to have short gaps in the rhizomes between the bulbs. They tend to be a bit longer than some of the others in the Oncidium alliance. I mean, some of the Oncidiums grow in a cluster, nice and tight, hardly any rhizome at all, just a bunch of bulbs. But these tend to like to extend, as do brassicas and some of the others. But they can climb, and a way to manage climbing type Oncidiums is to mount them and start them at the bottom of a mount pointing upwards, and then although they may start to climb away from the mount, the roots will pull them back in and hold them, yeah? So it's a way of avoiding them trying to escape the pots, but not everybody can grow mounted orchids, yeah? Now I thought I was wasting my time with mounts when I moved here because I lost a lot of my mounted orchids. Many of those were irreplaceable dendrobiums as well. So I gave up on them, but more recently, you know, during this year, I have mounted a few dendrobiums now that don't seem to be doing bad. So I may go back to having more mounts. The main problem is in this environment, the mounts would have to hang from this rail here. I've got metal S-shaped hooks that will go over that rail, and I can attach, you know, mesh racks to then hook the mounts on. But it's most of the time I've got quite tall shelves. Let me just swing that round so that you can see what I'm on about. So if you look at how high these plants are, there's no room for a rack there, there or there. And at the moment the next one is out of bounds as well because the cymbidiums are there, although that would be available in the summertime. I've got one rack over there already with a few mounts on, so I can't see what I'm filming now. Let's just turn the screen round. Yes, there's a rack there. That's what I mean. You can see the S hooks at the top with a wire rack and then individual mounts. I can do that, but there aren't many places I can do that. Yet again, tall plants, yeah? You also got the problem with that end, where that one is. Come midsummer time, for that 8 to 10 weeks, the sun comes in that section of the roof. They would be in light far too bright. So there's a limit to what I can do with mounted orchids, but they do grow well, mounted. They'll also grow in pots. It's not the end of the world if you can't have mounts. And anybody who feels seasick will take a pill. Sorry about that, moving the camera. But I'm leaving it where it is. I'm not taking it down to look at the plants. So. Right, let's have a look at some then. I will do pop-ups for names, and where I've got pictures of the blooms, which in most cases is a yes, not all, but most, I'll put the pictures up as well. Now we'll start off, I'll say straight away, most of my Miltonias are not doing that well. Some grew into large plants and grew away from the older parts of the plant and had to be split. So all the growths were taken off and potted up round the edge of a pot. So what looks like quite a large plant isn't, it's 4 or 5. And come the spring they will get split up. So we start off with a little rescue. And this is Regnellii species. Basically I managed to rescue a growth, the plant rotted basically. I managed to save one little piece. So we've got a pseudo bulb there that if that is loose enough, I'm going to take it off now. Oh, it was one that broke off that I stuck in to see if it would grow. And it did actually start to put up a new growth and then failed. So we'll have that out now because it serves no purpose. And then what's left, pushed out a new growth. It's got a few roots but not many. This new growth will push out another one with any luck, and if it does it will be safe. If it doesn't, then it'll just rot down. These have a nasty habit of rotting at the base. You've got to go very careful. If you think about it, there's some logic there. If they naturally climb as a rhizome and they come from damp forests, the roots that are produced on that from that climbing rhizome are in moist air all the time. Yeah, if they're in a damp forest, and that will keep them going long enough to grab hold of something. Yeah. Well, if you put that rhizome in a pot, it's not in an environment that it would naturally have. So it's too wet. So you've got to go very careful with your watering, unless they're mounted. Now, watering on these, if they're not growing, they don't need to be wet. They need to be kept quite dry, almost like a rest. Just class it as a rest, that's easy. No matter what time of year, class it as a rest. And unless you see the bulb starting to shrink in and get ribbed, then you've gone too far. Right, so that's that one. This one is a Miltonia. So it's actually a Miltoniopsis crossed with a Miltonia. So it is actually in fact now classed as an intergeneric, and this is Sunset. Very popular cross around, and originally it was Miltonia Sunset, but the cross was redone and introduced a bit of Miltoniopsis, so had to have a new genus name effectively. Now this is a couple of pieces in here. It's in a state of rescue. I would say it's probably rescued, but in its history it did have fusarium. Now that will stunt the growth and stop it progressing if it's still living. It's been treated several times. This is what's left and hopefully has grown away clean, but it's waiting to push out some new growths. The latest new growth, this one, not very strong, but it's there and it's got nice green leaves. The one round this side is a bit bigger, a bit stronger, and again has some nice green leaves. So I've probably saved it, but it's not what you'd call in a good state, and it doesn't have much in the way of a root system. So awaiting more new growths on that. Let's get those out of the way. Have a look at some of the bigger stuff now. Some of these look like quite big plants, but like I say, they're not necessarily. They're often multiple plants in a wide flat pot, which is a way of rescuing the leaves off of a large plant that's failing, and you want to rescue those front ends, the ones that have got the new growths. It's a way of doing it. I won't be doing it in the future, because although it looks okay and you've got all these plants around the edge of the pot's too big for each of those elements, so it's too wet. So I won't be doing it again. Right, so we'll have a quick look at this one, because we've only just had a look at this. This is the one that's in bloom at the moment, and the one that I made the mistake about forgetting that the species I likened it to only puts up a single bloom per spike. So this is obviously a hybrid. I would say it's probably an actual Miltonia hybrid, looking at the shape of the blooms, the shape of the lip, the way the petals and sepals curl back. These are all Miltonia traits, but I can't find a direct species that looks exactly like that. So it's going to be a hybrid. It could possibly still be an intergeneric. It could have something else in it, but I would say the majority of it is Miltonia. Consequently, I haven't got a name for it. The plant's doing okay. It's had a couple of new growths, and they've both bloomed. I believe, yes, it's 2 plants, and the front end of each of the pieces is where the spikes have come from, and the growths are not bad. So it's not doing bad, that one, but we had no name for it. And next we have one that I wish was doing a lot better, because it was a gift, but it's not doing as well as it should be. Nonetheless, I believe I have saved it, but only just. Now this is Miltonia flavescens, known as the Revenge, because INSA organised this through Burnham's to actually present one to me as a gift the next time I visited the nursery. So I didn't know this was coming, and I was quite happily having my cake and coffee, and Sarah came in with one of her backup staff, her minder, and came in and presented it to me and refused to say who it was from. And it took a while for me to find out who it was from as well. Now what we've got here is a plant that shriveled quite badly. It pushed out, I don't know whether I can tip it up and show you. It pushed out a new growth here that came up against the side of the pot, distorted and refused to progress. I don't think that's ever going to do anything unless it produces yet another new growth from that part of the rhizome, which I doubt. So on the rest of the plant we had a piece here. Bulbs are quite shriveled and most have lost their leaves, and then we had one piece that was pushing forward that looked like it was going to grow some roots. It's got a metal staple holding it against the media, because it did start to push some roots out. It still hasn't got a good root system, but what it does have now are 2 nice new growths coming off of this. Now Miltonias, quite like Brassias, often produce 2 new growths per bulb almost across the board, even if they're a weak plant. Now that's how this plant started off. If you come back to the base of the plant here, it started off by a single growth producing 2 new ones, and then one new one only produced 1, the other one produced 2, and then this one has produced 2. So they can spread out quite quickly, and given that they've got these longer rhizomes in between the bulbs, they become quite a space taking plant. They use a lot of space for not a lot of plant. Anyway, I've never got one of these to bloom. This is the second one I've had, but those 2 new growths have stalled. They're not going to die, but they're not going to grow very well with these low lights, short days and cooler temperatures. This would possibly give us a bit of a spurt in the spring when the better day lengths come back and my day temperatures rise a bit, and they hopefully will come back into growth. When they do, they should start producing some roots. When they do that, it'll get potted and separated, because the plant is already, this is a short, shallow, wide plant, and it's already got to the edge with just one new growth, and that's often what they do. But it's still with us, it's not gone. Right, so we've got this one here that really is not doing very well, and this, the tag says Miltonia spectabilis brackets hybrid, because it was sold as spectabilis, but it's not. It is a hybrid, it's not the species. And again, I think this is one, two, at least 3 pieces growing around the edge of the pot. It probably was 5 or 6 pieces, and all the bits around here have rotted and been taken out to stop the rot spreading. So this is what's left. Now what's left is potentially going to grow. This piece here is not doing very well at all. It contains this bulb, and the bulb behind it. The next piece along, the new growth is not bad. Not a bad bulb, not completely shriveled. That one's not too bad. The next one along, not a very good new growth, but it has started another one out the side. Now the last piece I don't think, well, it's the back end of that piece, but that's what I've got, and it's not lost, and it's highly likely to put on a spurt of growth when we get the longer days. Not very good roots at all. If you look there, that new growth there where my finger is, you can see the roots coming out, and you can see the rhizomes above the media. Yeah. Unfortunately, the whole plant's up against the edge of the pot, so I can't do anything with it at this time of year. So that's that one. And then the last one that had the same thing done to it as that one, which is all the growths, all the new growths were taken off and potted up separately. These have come on better. Now the tag on this one says Miltonia morelliana brackets hybrid, because although the blooms look almost identical, it has great big long spikes with many blooms on, gorgeous blooms. It is a hybrid, therefore I'm not sure what the name is, so I don't even bother checking. Now these new growths, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, I think there's 5 in there, and they're all in various stages of pulling on, but they are all pulling on, they're not going backwards. This one here has got a lovely new growth here, pushing up against the side of the pot. These will all have to come out, they've all got to be potted up, probably separately to get them in smaller pots. I mean, that one, the new growth is maturing. That's even big enough to bloom now. This one round here, new growth not that big, but not bad. That one there's got a new growth starting at the base, and it doesn't look very good, that particular new growth, but the one down there is a new one. That will probably stall through the winter. I was just checking, there's possibly some other new growths lurking down in there, because it's quite a bit of a dense mass at the moment. But these will be taken out in the spring when things start coming back into growth, and probably potted up separately. And what that was, something bouncing along the roof. It's probably that robin, he loves getting up there rooting around in those clumps of moss that have stuck to the roof. He likes throwing them around to see what's living underneath. Anyway, so again, lovely blooms, and it doesn't look very clever. It looks like quite a big plant, but it's not. It's lots of little pieces, and those little pieces will get their own home come the growing season again, and we'll see how many we can keep. There's enough in there to try at least 1 or 2 on a mount. No reason why not. So we may go back to having more mounts than we've currently got. So that's Miltonias. I will do the Miltoniopsis as a separate video. We've done Brassias. What else would I do? I would do the actual Oncidiums themselves. I've actually got some that are classed as true Oncidiums. In other words, they're not an intergeneric. They are actually Oncidiums. They are the basis for the alliance. All the others are offshoots. So, and I think that's all I've got. So say there's a few intergenerics thrown around in amongst them. It's difficult to know where to go with this set of videos. I mean, if you take my cooler, shadier set, that's got a lot of the Odontoglossum types in, some of which are intergenerics, which may well be hybridized with Miltonias, possibly Brassias, possibly normal Oncidiums. But given that all the Odontoglossums have been reclassified as Oncidiums, they're all Oncidiums really, but they're a special subset because they're all cool growers, whereas your normal run-of-the-mill Oncidiums are not necessarily cool growers. So it's a big alliance with a lot of variety in it. Anyway, so that's a look at my Miltonias. We are coming up to a gap in videos. I shall film something tomorrow, Friday. Saturday I'm out all day. So unless I can find a little something to put to one side, there certainly won't be any videos on Saturday. Sunday, weather permitting, Hannah's down, we're going to go and have a go at some of the garden. And at the moment it sounds like we might have better temperatures and no rain, which means we can get out in the garden. Now obviously I will film possibly a before and an after. I mean, Hannah just doesn't want to be in any of the videos. She doesn't like appearing, if you know what I mean. But we can certainly have a look at the work that we do. It's basically going to be a massive tidy up, I hope, where we can shift almost all of these dead leaves that have come down off that oak tree, cut off dead stalks, back to the nice new growth ready for next year. And by removing the leaves, who knows, we might find some bulbs starting to push through. So there should be something to film on Sunday, but it won't be the normal Sunday orchid chat. It won't be that. I won't have time with Hannah down to be doing that sort of thing. So we'll be missing that one. Yes, so some things still to come. I've got a normal week next week where I'm here all week and I'm here at the weekend. So we'll have a normal week leading up to the Christmas week where again it'll be all over the place again. But strictly speaking, I'm travelling on Christmas Eve to pick Hannah up. Christmas Day and Boxing Day obviously is Christmas. I certainly won't be filming. And then the day after that, I'm back to normal because Hannah will have gone home Boxing Day, and I'll be back to normal. I know New Year's Eve and New Year's Day comes in the middle of that, but I don't take any notice of them. To me, they are just another day. It is a bit of a shame for my son because he was born on Christmas on New Year's Eve. He guaranteed a party. But yeah, that happens to be his birthday. But as far as I know, I think he might be away this year. So yeah. We shall see. Anyway, so that's what's going on. And weather-wise, we're still in that dull, cold weather. It's only 7 or 8 degrees outside. That wind has finally dropped at long last. But it's just dull, overcast, dull and cold. But apparently it's going to warm up a bit for Sunday, which will be handy if we're going to be doing some work outside. So there we go. Thanks for dropping by. I'll see you next time.